Jerry Roach grew up in a large family on a farm in French Lick, Indiana. His parents, Anita and Leon, were hard workers with a bit of entrepreneurship. In addition to running the farm, they owned and operated a local grocery store for 33 years. Jerry's parents taught their kids their most important life lesson. When you do the right thing, good things will happen. That lesson was reinforced each and every day throughout Jerry's childhood as he watched his parents care for their family, care for their business, and care for their neighbors and community. It's no surprise then that as a safety leader, Jerry is someone who cares about what he does and sees every employee that he works with at Kimball Electronics as his customer. For Jerry, safety isn't just a process or a metric. It's not just a department or a necessary expense. Safety is everyone's job. It doesn't matter what it says on your job description. Whether you work on the shop floor or in the executive offices, safety should be the foundation to everything you do, every decision you make. It's the hallmark of a successful company. That's just a bit of what I learned in my conversation with Jerry Roach, Director of Safety, Environmental and Facilities at Kimball Electronics.
I've been in safety now for 22 years. Started out with Visteon Automotive, which still is part of the Ford Motor Company. And then I went to the furniture business, wood office furniture, and then now I'm in electronics. And absolutely love safety, which some may think that's odd, but to me it is just such a rewarding career. I'm the type person that I get up every morning and just can't wait to get to work.
What got you interested in safety in the first place?
Well, just really wanting to help people and have a job that, first of all, that you enjoy, that I would enjoy. And then secondly, one that I could make a difference every day. I didn't want a job where I was just sitting behind a desk and not being able to make a difference in individuals' lives. And I think that with safety, it's something that can be done, especially if you work hard at it and you allow your employees to know how much you care about them and how much that you want to see them be successful. And then really helping everyone understand that with working safely, success comes in many, many ways other than just the safety program itself.
So I want to flash back a little bit. I did a little research on you, and I noticed that you grew up on a farm and you were part of a big family and you helped out your dad at his grocery store.
That's true.
What did you learn from him about how business operates and how to really do what's right?
Well, first of all, work ethic. My parents are extremely hard workers, and my dad, is up every morning and taking care of the farm, taking care of the different chores there. They owned their own grocery store. My parents did. And then he also was a school bus driver for 37 years. So, here, and dad was one that he never complained. You never heard him say anything bad about anybody. He never seemed to have a bad day. No doubt that he did, but he showed all of the kids, myself included, of course, that you work hard, you do what's right, you go in every single day, and no matter what the job is that you've agreed to do, whether it's digging a ditch or building something, whatever it is that you've agreed to do, you absolutely give it your all.
Were you one of those kids on a farm that was making sure everything was done the right way?
I tried to. And once again, I learned most of that, though, from my parents, that, you don't take shortcuts because shortcuts lead to injuries. Shortcuts lead to bad things happening, whether it was working with the cattle, whether it was putting up hay, whatever it might be, you take care of business. And, the same at my dad's grocery store, my parents' grocery stores, you take care of business and you take care of your customers. And I personally believe that in safety, here at my job, I've got over 600 customers. Every single person that works here is my customer. And seeing how that they took care of their customers, really set that tone for me in life, and how they did things that really nobody ever even knew about, and to take care of their customers and to take care of, for instance, students that rode my dad's school bus. Whenever he would find that there was a family was having trouble, whether it be financially, whatever it might be, there would be many times when he would close the store at night. And a lot of times I was there because I wanted to be at the store a lot with him, even when I was pretty young. And you get ready to leave and there'd be 2 or 3 bags of groceries in the vehicle. And you'd ask him where we're going. And he said, well, we just got to take something and, take these to somebody. And he never he would just go and leave it on their porch and never even tell the person where it came from. And, individuals to this day have no idea how many times my parents did that for people. And to me, that's important because I think it's important to do things behind the scenes, but not be braggadocious about it. Just take care of business and it all comes back. And karma, definitely, it all comes back around and it pays off in the end.
God, your dad sounds like he was fascinating. What a great background.
Yeah, very blessed to say the least.
So the focus on people, the focus on helping others, I can see why that led. You have degrees in both HR and business management, and I can see that relationship from an HR perspective. I read an interview from you or with you where you once explained that, because I think you were asked the question, how do you go from HR into safety? And you explained that in a safety role, there's many times where you're directly involved with the HR function, but that it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. In an HR function, you're not necessarily involved with safety. Is that true? Did I get that right? Okay.
No, that's absolutely right.
So I was curious, can you say the same about overall business leadership and decision-making? Do safety programs and investments allow you, the things that you manage today in your role, does that allow you to be involved in or at least contribute to overall business decision-making?
It should. And for businesses to be honestly successful, at least as successful as they possibly can be, that needs to happen. And what I mean by that is so many times I feel that, and I've seen that companies look at business plans and, you've got your production, you've got this, you've got that, whatever those other parts might be. And then safety is kind of over in the corner. And instead, why in the world are we not looking at those dollars and cents? Because that is hard cash. And whenever you have an injury, you might as well take that, let's say $20,000, whatever that injury cost you, you might as well just take that literally off the bottom line, because that financially, that is what happens. And way too many companies just don't see it that way, because I believe, and I think that we've been able to prove over the years through safety programs that we've helped build, that safety is absolutely the foundation of business. Because whenever you have a safe facility, safe company, whatever that company might be, then what you're going to see over time is you're going to see more pride, if you use it correctly, more pride built in that company by the employees. You're going to see quality improve because morale is going to improve, and it just keeps going up. And for some reason, and I never have been able to figure out why, the financial part or safety just as a whole just is not figured into or looked at as part of the quote unquote business unit and the overall business plan. And that absolutely does not make any sense to me whatsoever.
What you're explaining, I look at it and see that there are companies that see safety as a necessary expense and others that see it as a strategic investment. And that's exactly what you've just described. So if you could talk to those business leaders at companies where it's more of the first and less of that strategic viewpoint, what would you say to them?
Well, why would you not look at safety from that, from a strategic aspect and really build that into your business unit? Why would you? I think a lot of it is that it's been that way so long in American industry, and not just American industry, it's been that way globally, and it still is today in way too many companies. And it's just that individuals, leaders have not taken the time, or maybe they just haven't thought of it, to move in a different direction and to use safety as, literally the foundation of their business, because it definitely proves out that whenever they will do that and really not just say, hey, safety first, and that's pretty much all you ever hear about safety at that company, they live it every single day, then, it's just going to turn into all kinds of positives for that company.
You bring up a good point. How does a company transition from safety just being sort of a motto or something that they say and turning it into something that's truly a part of their culture?
Well, that is right there what you said, turn it into part of your culture. So most of the time, and not all the time, of course, but vast majority of the time, what I have witnessed is that safety is not thought of until either something bad is happening at that moment, or something bad has already happened. And then it seems like companies are really good at running to the problem after it's already happened, after, there's been an injury, after there's been property damage, after there's been whatever that situation might be. And they're great at running to that and then taking care of it. And I've also seen a lot of leaders, though, who then get mad or get upset because that situation happened. Well, they can get upset if they want, as long as the only person they're getting upset with is themselves because it's their fault. If they are not leading, and it doesn't just have to be the CEO of a company or the vice president of a company, it has to be the entire leadership team. And whatever that leadership team lets their supervisors, allows all their employees to know is important to them, is exactly what's going to become important to those individuals. And safety is a team effort, and it has to start at the top, but it also has to be the newest hire coming through your door has to know from day one that safety is the most important thing. And we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to actually live it. And I believe that safety is something that has to be lived by your employees, and your leadership team has to be the ones who set the example for that.
You were talking about how good companies are at running to the problem and then trying to fix it and then trying to point the blame. And I think we see that really rampant here about how to be preventative versus reactive. And there's got to be a balance there. And as a safety leader, and especially when you're talking to a company that needs to make an investment, how do you convince something that the ounce of prevention is worth so much more than just fixing the problem after the fact?
Well, it's going to be different aspects that will lead to that. And a lot of it, let's say you have a leader, and we could be talking about the entire leadership team, and you need to get buy-in, say, of the five, maybe it's 5 leaders that you need to get buy-in. Well, leader one, maybe it's one of the vice presidents. What is their niche? What is the thing or the items that they really look at? And let's say for them, it's financial. That's how you really get their attention. Then you need to be able to prove out that, let's say, for example, if we make this investment, I'll just use $20,000 as a round figure. If we use this $20,000 investment for, let's say, a lift, to an overhead lift or a hoist or something of that nature, here's what we're going to prevent. How much is a back surgery? How much are the different types of injuries? And sometimes, I've been involved in situations where someone will say, well, I've worked here 20 years and that's never happened. Well, the way that I explain that is we have an issue. We can see that it's an issue. No one has been injured yet. And basically we got lucky for 20 years. And I don't believe, we'll take luck every time we have an opportunity. But if you're going to rely on luck to run your safety program, luck always runs out. And maybe 999 times it was fine, but number 1,000 is coming. And that's when you have the incident or the injury or whatever it may be. Proactiveness when it comes to safety is absolutely vital.
But when times get tough, how do you keep leadership from taking those shortcuts? Because there's things that they need to hit. Either hit a production schedule, hit a bottom line number that they have to deliver.
Way too often in the past, I've seen situations where, and I've not been involved in this, but I've seen situations where, there was a downturn in the economy or a company wasn't doing well. And the very first department they look at cutting is safety. Well, that just doesn't make any sense, because at that point, what you're saying to the employees that are left is safety really doesn't matter, which means your safety doesn't matter. You don't matter as much to us. And you're not eroding even, you're destroying that culture that you've hopefully been able to build and the relationship that you've been able to have with your employees to show them that you care. But to me, saying that safety is the first thing that you start eliminating or start cutting, that's just an excuse. That is just an easy way out excuse, but you're going to pay for that on the other end.
How do you avoid complacency then?
Well, first of all, everyone has to understand. And I've been in situations personally before where, the company I worked for received an award or, something of that nature from OSHA. And the very first concern that we had was we have to make sure that complacency doesn't set in, because at that point, everyone needs to understand, yes, we reached this goal. It's fantastic. But in reality, our focus needs to be even more on safety now than it ever was before. And that's going to be, once again, through the leadership and once again, through the absolute dedication of the workers, the supervisors, everyone towards safety and building that pride in safety. Otherwise, your program will start to slip, because complacency is human nature and safety is never done. And we just have to get to the point, and it's not going to happen overnight, because culture change doesn't happen overnight. Building of a program doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time, but complacency is very real. And complacency, I refer to complacency as the hidden killer, because I think complacency has killed and injured more workers than anything else, because they just, thought that they had it figured out, or thought that everything was going to be fine because it had been for 20 years or whatever that time period or whatever that situation might be. It takes years to build these, programs that like this, that where you can reach that level, but it can be done. And to me, it is the smart investment for companies to make, to allow that type of program to be built within their company.
Do you think a company's safety record is a value that can be used to attract employees?
Absolutely. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It is going to help morale for your employees that you already have. And then it's going to, other people are going to say, you know what, I think that's a company I want to go work for. And they may not say because of our safety program or the safety program of that company, but it will come down to they care about their employees. And when you have a good, strong safety program, then to me, a major part of that has to be channeled towards the reason we care about safety here so much is because we care about you first as an individual, and we care about making sure you go home to your family every night. And that may sound simple, sound simplistic, but it's absolutely the truth, and it's very powerful when used in the right way.
Do you think companies should think of safety as an integral part of their brand, their identity in the marketplace? In other words, should they wear that on their sleeve, or is that something that once you work with the company, either as an employee or a customer, that's where it gets revealed?
No, you need to be out in front of that. If you have a customer who's looking at you, they need to know how important safety is, because they're going to want to know how important quality is to your brand. You need to let them know, hey, here's our safety program, which, by the way, the reason that our safety program is so important to you as our customer is because it's going to lead to on-time deliveries. I realize it's not the direct per se, but it does help build that to where your efficiencies go up. Everything starts falling in place, but it has to start with safety. Because if you have a lot of injuries and you have a lot of employees who are off work, then you're going to have, your quality is not going to be as good, because you're not going to have that employee who knows that job there working every day. And you're going to be moving employees around and doing jobs that they're not used to, which is going to hurt quality. It's going to hurt your efficiencies. And it just continues to go down the line. If your efficiencies are low, the opportunity or the chances of you not getting the product to the customer at the time they want it is very real. So it has to be something that is discussed by companies, and it needs to be discussed, in my opinion, before quality is even discussed and explained in the right manner.
I love that answer. I look at it as it's what brings your brand to life. If you've got a brand that talks about how much you care about your customers, you care about the environment, you care about the community, you care about quality, there's all those attributes that a lot of brands embrace. But safety is the foundation for all of those. And you can't care for quality if you don't have safety as an organic part of your business.
Or are you really going to care for your customer if you don't care for your employees?
Do you remember the first time you realized what you were doing in safety was really making a difference at the business?
I do. It was, of course, many years ago now, but it was a situation where we had actually had a major quality issue, a very, very bad quality issue. Actually, it turned into a recall. And through the investigation of the quality, what we found was, and I wasn't, I guess you would say, mature enough at that point in my job to understand how important safety was yet. But what we found was that the same individuals were not working that same job on a consistent basis. And it literally led back to the fact that there were so many injuries in that department that it turned into, it was part of the reason for a major quality issue that, it almost crippled the company at that point. Thank goodness the company, we were able to work out of it, and we were stronger coming out of that. But that shouldn't even have happened to start with, had the safety program been where it needed to be at that point. And it just wasn't there yet, however.
If somebody's pursuing a career in safety right now, how do they find those companies where safety isn't, that thing off to the side that you just described? What are the telltale signs that they should be looking for?
Well, that's a little bit tougher in some cases. One, for instance, if you walk into the lobby of a company, is there anything about safety in the front lobby? Or is everything in the front lobby about quality or about, whatever the other subjects might be? Whenever you come in as a visitor or to ask for an application and they hand that to you, they also hand you a brochure, a safety brochure, or anything else. When you go to a company's website, do they talk about safety as part of their company goals, the parts of what's important for that company, or is it just about that company? Do they talk about safety? When you talk to employees who work there, ask the question, is safety important? Because they'll tell you, most of the time they'll let you know pretty quick whether it is or not. And then more and more we're seeing where in universities, that have safety degrees and safety programs, they'll talk about and they'll begin to know the companies that are bought into safety and the ones that really hold it as one of their, torches that is important to them. So there's different ways and different manners to look for safety. And then if you have an opportunity to come in, let's say, and take a tour of the facility, whether it be as a customer or however it might be, and this takes a little bit of time, many times to really start to understand this, but you can actually, when you walk into a company, after a little bit of time, you can actually feel whether the safety program is actually important. And it's just the work environment. It's the way that you see the employees moving. It's the way that you see the processes within that facility being done. And you can tell pretty quickly if safety is important or not, or whether it's just a sign out on the front door and that's basically it.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you follow Captain Sully Sullenberger.
Yes.
So I was curious about what is it about his story, other than the obvious, that really captures your interest?
Well, he's a hero, first of all. And like you said, that's the obvious. But, here's the way I see him is somebody who does things right, who had done things right for years in his job, and really nothing bad had ever happened, but had thought about those situations and at least in his own mind had prepared for those situations that most would say, oh, that's never going to happen. That's not something you ever have to worry about. But he had in his mind at least thought about those situations and the what ifs. And he had also taken the time ahead of time to think through scenarios and to think about things and not just sit back and wait until it happened. And I think that's so important with, for instance, emergency action plans. That can't be something you just talk about once a year or once every 2 years or whatever. That's something that, you do not want to wait until an incident is literally in the midst of happening and then everybody try to figure out how to react. It needs to and once again, this takes a long time too, but it has to be one of those things where people begin to react just out of literally they've been educated, it's been talked about, and they just do it without really, in some ways, even thinking about it. But they do think about it. They've thought about it beforehand. And so they just go into the mode that they're taking care of business, and that is to follow that emergency action plan, and they know it inside and out. And he knew his airplane. He knew the layout of all the airports in the area. He knew all of that before that day ever came. And I'm sure he never thought he was going to need to know it, but he at least had taken the time to think about it and think it through.
Mm-hmm.
I want to tell you one real quick story if you have time.
Sure.
Okay. So my wife, we have one child, our son, he's 22. And whenever he was in high school, our house was pretty much the hangout, for most of his friends and everything. So with that, then our vehicles became what, they would take, right? He would take to drive. And I'll never forget one night I received it was a text message from one of his buddies, and it was 4 of his friends sitting in the back seat of our truck, and he's driving down the road and somebody else is filming, and they've got my OSHA manual out. His 4 friends in the back seat are staring at it, looking at it, and they finally look. One of them looks at the camera and says, "What is this?" So they thought that was funny. So then the next time, like 2 weeks later, they take another one of our vehicles, and the same 4, they were holding up an OSHA manual, and they're like, "You've got one of these books in this car too." So whenever they got back to our house that night, our son took them to my wife's vehicle, which also had an OSHA manual in it. And so it became a huge thing with those boys was, is your dad a safety nerd? What the heck? Nobody has an OSHA manual in their car. And
let alone 3.
One of my guys actually was laughing at me this morning because he said something about jumper cables, and he goes, "Do you have a pair?" Because they needed some. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I've got a pair in my trunk." And he goes, "Is it next to your OSHA manual?" And I was like, "Actually, it is." And they were just rolling, thinking back about those times. And I still remember one of our supervisors, I think our son was 3, if I remember right at the time. And she was like, "I saw your son last night." I'm like, "What?" I said, so she told me I said, because he was with his aunt, and she didn't even know his aunt. And I said, "How'd you know it was my son?" She goes, "Well, first of all, he looked like you, but he had safety glasses on when he walked into a beauty salon with his aunt, and he had safety glasses on." I don't know why, but he did. And she goes, "I knew as soon as I saw him." She goes, "And it was the safety glasses. It wasn't because I realized, man, he looks just like Jerry. It was, holy cow, that's got to be Jerry's kid because he's wearing safety glasses." So that was kind of funny too.
Any other words of advice, final words of advice you want to share?
Well, I think yes. And this is for employees. This is for leadership of companies. And it doesn't have to be a large corporation. It could be a very small business. Safety has to be the foundation that you build everything on. Whether you're working on a farm, whether you're, working in retail, grocery store, anything of that nature, whether you're working in a factory that's building whatever that, might be, whether it be trucks, whether it be furniture, whether it be electronic goods, whatever that is, it doesn't matter what you're building. The truth is that safety is safety. And yes, it may look a little bit different, whether you're in a furniture factory or whether you're in a oil plate, that not makes oil, but you know what I'm trying to say. Oh my gosh.
Refines?
Thank you.
The refinery?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Whether
anything I can do to help.
Whether it be a factory that makes furniture, whether it be an oil refinery, yes, it looks different until you really start to get involved and you really start to look at the entire picture. And what you realize pretty quickly is safety is safety. And how are we going to take care of our employees? How is that going to be done? And how are we going to not just do it in order to be in compliance? Because I've seen so many safety programs where literally the entire safety program is built around being in compliance. And what you see is overall, the safety program is either not effective or it's not nearly as effective as you want it to be or as it should be, because all you're worrying about is, in fact, compliance, when it needs to be about the individuals, the workers, because whenever you really focus on your workers, on your people, you show them that you care. Yes, you want to do the right thing, and compliance is part of that. Don't get me wrong. It is part of that, but compliance cannot be the overall program itself. It can't, because you're never going to get it to the point that you really want it to be if that is, in fact, your entire focus. And I think way too often being in compliance is what the focus is, when it needs to be actually on the individuals and on your people.
Well, Jerry, I wanted to thank you for spending the time today. I've really enjoyed talking to you and hearing your thoughts about safety, and in particular, how safety is truly a team effort. That was loud and clear, and that it really should be the foundation of business. But fundamentally, when you do what's right, good things are going to happen. Thank you very much for your time, Jerry. Well, that was my conversation with Jerry Roach of Kimball Electronics. You know, one of the things that really impressed me about Jerry was how much of his approach to corporate safety really started on that farm in Indiana. It's not something I expected, but it's clear to me why he does what he does and how his passion is helping the companies he works for to really set themselves apart in their fields. Safety is a team effort. It should be the foundation of business, and when you do what's right, good things will follow. This is Kathleen Finato. Join me again as I talk to safety leaders across a wide range of industries to understand how what drives them in their field is also driving the success of their companies. It's no accident.